And then I'm just going to start with sharing my screen to get the PowerPoint. Okay, so welcome to lecture 1 of my classical Greek introductory course. Today, we will learn the Greek alphabet, familiarize ourselves with the diphthongs, and with the main diacritical signs as well. Many of you are, of course, already familiar with the Greek alphabet, while others will know at least a few of the letters. Since the Latin alphabet, of course, derives or was developed from the Greek, just like the Greek was developed from the Phoenician. So, let us begin with a short historical background of the origins of the Greek alphabet. As I said, the Greeks received the basis for their alphabet from the Phoenicians in the 8th century BCE. The Phoenicians lived in the eastern Aegean, in the area which is nowadays called Lebanon. The Phoenicians were a seafaring people with commercial activities spanning over the whole of the Mediterranean Sea. They also set up many colonies, the most famous of which is Carthage, in the area which is nowadays called Libya. It was thus not at all remarkable either that the Phoenicians also came into contact with the Greeks, but rather this was unavoidable. And it's also likely that the Greeks originally began to use the Phoenician writing system exactly in order to ease commercial transactions with their eastern neighbors. But then, of course, the alphabet was quickly taken over into a wide variety of uses. So, for instance, hexameter in the Homeric Greek language has been found on a wine jug from Athens, dating from the early 740s BC. All the same, from the Phoenicians, the Greeks received an alphabet consisting of 22 symbols, each of which designated a consonant followed by a vowel. To this Phoenician alphabet, the Greeks then added symbols designating only vowels. In other words, the Greeks kept the general sequence and the names of the letters in the Phoenician alphabet, but remade some of the letters, those which in Greek did not correspond to any sound. So that way they were turned into vowels. And on top of it, the Greeks also created some symbols of their own. Originally, the Greek alphabet looked very different in varying parts of the Greek-speaking world. But with time, the Ionian, that is the Eastern Greek variant, came to be used by all Greeks. And in Athens, the Ionian alphabet was officially sanctioned in 403 BC. This is also the alphabet we will learn. and which is still in use today in Greece. You find the alphabet on page 3, section 1.1 in the Cambridge Grammar of Classical Greek, which we use on this course. So let us now look at each of these 22 letters in the classical Greek alphabet individually, beginning with alpha. Alpha is pronounced as a short or long A sound. As an example, we can take the name of the goddess of love, Aphrodite, which begins with an alpha. Beta is the second letter in the Greek alphabet, and beta is the first letter in the word Bacchus, which is the epithet of the wine god Dionysius. The next letter is gamma, which stands for a G sound, or in some context also for a ng sound. Gamma is the first letter in the word gigas, which means giant. Delta then is the fourth letter in the alphabet, and it's pronounced like a D. Delta is the first letter in Delphoi, which is the Greek name for Delphi, where the god Apollo had his oracle. Epsilon expresses a short A sound. A Greek word beginning with epsilon is, for example, ear, which means spring. The sixth letter is zeta, which is pronounced like a voiced S. Zeus, of course, is the name of the highest god in the Greek pantheon. Moving on, the next letter is eta, which is pronounced like a long A sound. An example of a Greek word beginning with eta is hemera, which means day. Notice here the accent on the initial letter, which causes the sound in the beginning. Or actually, this is not an accent as such, but a so-called spiritus sign. But we will deal with this accent called spiritus asper later on in the lecture. The next letter is theta. This letter is pronounced like a voiceless lisp, or like the English de. Theseus was the name of the mythological Athenian king who killed the Minotaur. Iota expresses either a long or a short E sound, or sometimes also a Y sound in borrowed words. The E sound we find in the word iatros, which means doctor, and the Y sound is in Jason, who was the leader of the Argonauts. The 10th letter is kappa, which expresses a K sound. We find kappa in the Greek name for Crete, Krete. The next letter is lambda, which expresses an L sound. Lesbos, of course, is the famous Greek island on the in the Aegean Sea, where the poet Sappho lived around 600 BCE. Then we have mu, which expresses an M sound. A famous mythological woman name is Medea, who was Jason's wife. Then we have ny, which stands for an N sound, and we find this letter, for instance, in the word Nike. meaning victory. The following letter is Xi, which expresses a K and an S sound combined. Xi is the first letter in the name Xenophon, who was one of Socrates' disciples and whose texts are often read in introductory Greek classes. Omicron is pronounced like a short O sound. A word beginning with Omicron is onar, which means dream. The next letter is P, which is equivalent to the letter P in the Latin alphabet. We find P as the initial letter in the word polis, which means city. Rho, on the other hand, looks like the Latin P, but is actually used to express an R sound. We find Rho in the word rhetor, which means orator. You may notice that the initial Rho counts. The initial Rho has spiritus asper on top of it. And this is because Rho counts as a so-called semivowel. That is a sound which, although technically a consonant, is phonetically similar to a vowel sound. Sigma is the same as the Latin S. As you can see in the alphabet chart, there are actually different variants of the small letter version of this letter. The first one, which looks more like a circle, is used when the letter stands in the middle or beginning of a word, whereas the second one, which is closer in form to the Latin S, is used only at the end of a word. In the name of the city Sestos, we find both of these sigmas. The next letter is tau, which expresses a T sound. Tau is found in the name of the city Troia, outside of which the events in the Iliad take place. Y expresses an Y sound, which can be either long or short. We find Y as the initial letter in the word hybris, which means insolence. This word begins with the aforementioned accent called spiritus asper, and actually it's the case that all classical Greek words beginning with an Y takes a spiritus asper. But as I said, we will deal with the accents later. The letter Phi stands for an F sound, as in the name Philippos. The most famous Philippos was the father of Alexander the Great. The following letter is Chi. We find Chi as the initial letter in the word chaos, which means chaos. The next to last letter in the Greek alphabet is Psi, which is a P and a S sound combined. We find Psi in the word pseudos, which means lie. The last letter in the alphabet is omega, which is pronounced like a long O sound. We find an initial omega in the word okeanos, which is the name of a Greek god, or a titan actually, but which is also the Greek name for the sea, which is today referred to as the Atlantic Ocean. Actually, the English word ocean, which is the same as the Swedish ocean, also stems from the Greek okeanos. Moving forward then to the next to last topic of today, which is diphthongs. that is, vowels consisting of two different sounds. You find more information on diphthongs on pages 8 to 10 in the Cambridge Grammar, which I also attached to this material. The following is just a short overview of the topic. An example of a diphthong in English is found in the word house, where the diphthong is formed by the combination of the vowels O and U. In Greek as well, diphthongs are expressed by writing a sequence with two different vowels. There are short diphthongs and long diphthongs. The following are possible short diphthongs in Greek. These are pronounced as follows: I, a, oi, ui, au, eu, and u. The long diphthongs exist in the following combinations: an alpha followed by a iota, an eta with an iota, and an omega with an iota. In these combinations, the last iota is actually silent. So the iota, therefore, is not at all pronounced, and that's why it's also often placed under the initial vowel, forming the diphthong. So that's why these long diphthongs are actually pronounced a, e, and o. Okay, today we are finally also going to overview the so-called diacritical signs. In the classical Greek writing system, these signs are more numerous than in most modern European languages. On the one hand, we have in Greek 3 different types of accents, and on the other hand, we have symbols which are called spiritus. Let us begin with the spiritus signs. You find more information of these on page 4, sections 1.6 and 1.7 in the grammar. First, we have in section 1.7 the signs called spiritus lenis and spiritus asper. A word which begins with a vowel or with a diphthong always receives a spiritus lenis or a spiritus asper. These symbols are then placed in front of or above the letter that they connect to. Typically in front when the vowel is large, and on top when the vowel is small. Spiritus lenis does not cause any kind of alteration in the sound of the vowel it connects to. The other symbol, spiritus asper, on the other hand, shows that the vowel is to be pronounced with a breathing h sound preceding the opening vowel. So, assuming that the opening vowel is an alpha or an a sound, the letter is to be pronounced ha. Moving forward, as mentioned, we have in classical Greek 3 different accents. These you find in section 1.6 in the grammar, and they are the following: the acute, the grave, and the circumflex accent. The place of the accent shows which syllable in the word should be stressed. So, for instance, in the word abatos, where the acute accent is placed on the opening vowel together with the spiritus lenis sign, it is this vowel that should be stressed as well, abatos. The grave accent, on the other hand, is only used when the accent falls on the last syllable in a word. And the circumflex is reserved for words where the accent falls on a long vowel or a diphthong. But that was all for today. In the following lecture, we begin looking at nouns in the second declension, and we overview the present indicative active forms of verbs.